Jack lived alone on the edge of a forgotten world. He was an old human now, retired from everything. War, work, even friendship. His ranch sat under a red alien sky, dry winds blowing through broken fences. Every morning he fed the chickens, checked the fences and spoke to no one. Every night he sat on his wooden porch with a tin cup in hand, staring into the sunset like it might answer a question he forgot long ago. He didn't need much and no one needed him. That was fine. That was peaceful. Until the evening, everything changed. The sun was melting into the hills, painting the land, gold and blood red. Jack leaned back on his chair, boots crossed, dog sleeping beside him. Then he heard it. A knock, soft but strange. No one ever knocked here. No one ever came this far out. He stood slowly, his bones aching. The knock came. Again, but it wasn't sharp or angry. It was quiet, like a whisper from someone who didn't want to be heard. He picked up his old rifle from the door, not to shoot, just to be sure. When he opened the gate, his eyes widened. There were 11 of them. 11 women, not human, not local either. They wore ragged robes, their skin different shades, blue, green, silver, and gold. Their eyes were tired, haunted, but still alive. One of them, tall with glowing purple eyes, stepped forward. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "We need shelter." Jack didn't speak, just stared. The wind blew dust between them, dry and sharp. Then one of the women collapsed. Jack dropped his rifle and rushed forward. He wasn't fast, but his hands were steady as he caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold, her body light, too light. She hadn't eaten in days. The other women gathered around, whispering in a language Jack didn't understand. But fear needs no translation. He saw it in their eyes. The fear of being turned away, of being hunted, of losing hope again. "Come in," he said quietly, surprising even himself. They hesitated, unsure. "I won't hurt you," Jack added, "but you're not staying out here." He led them inside his ranch house. It was old, dusty, filled with broken tools and silent memories. But it was warmer than the desert night, and the floor was clean, enough to rest. Jack poured water into old metal cups and gave them out. They drank without speaking, grateful but cautious. He placed a blanket over the fainted one, her chest slowly rising now. She would live, at least for tonight. He watched them eat the dry bread he gave, saw how their hands trembled as they held it. War refugees, maybe, or slaves who escaped. He'd seen eyes like that before. Long ago, in another war, in another galaxy. When the oldest one, gray skin and yellow eyes, finished her cup, she finally spoke. "We are widows," she said. "All of us. Our mates died in the last war." Jack didn't interrupt. "We were sent to a camp after that, no rights, no names," she continued. "Only numbers and work until we fled." "Why come here?" Jack asked quietly. The oldest woman looked up, tears building in her eyes. "Because someone told us. An old human lives alone here who once helped a dying enemy." Jack blinked. A memory returned, one he buried long ago. A battlefield. Smoke and a hand reaching out to him. "Not to kill, but to beg, you remember, don't you?" she whispered. He didn't answer, just stared into the flames of the old stove. Maybe he did remember. Maybe he didn't want to. Outside, the night grew colder. Stars shone over the dead hills, and the wind carried the cry of far-off beasts. Inside, the 11 alien widows lay close together on the floor, warm for the first time in days. Jack watched them in silence, his dog curled near the door, guarding as always. He thought he had nothing left to offer the universe. No purpose, no fire, no future. But tonight strangers came knocking, and he opened his door. And somewhere deep inside, something flickered back to life. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, he would let them sleep in peace. He would stand watch like he once did long ago, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done yet. Jack woke before sunrise, just like every day, but this time the house wasn't silent. He heard breathing, not just his old dog's, but soft breathing from many bodies sleeping across the floor. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. Then he remembered. The knock, the women, the fainted one, the way they had looked at him like he was their only chance. He stood quietly, stretched his aching back, and walked into the kitchen. He made a pot of hot grain porridge, the only thing he had plenty of. The smell slowly drifted through the old wooden house. One by one, the alien widows began to stir, blinking in the morning light that peeked through the cracked windows. They didn't speak at first, unsure if they were allowed. The youngest, a thin woman with green skin and golden eyes, looked around. Nervously, Jack simply pointed to the pot. "Eat," he said. No more words were needed. They moved slowly, carefully, as if worried a wrong move would send them back into the cold. The fainted woman from last night sat up with help from another. She looked at Jack and gave a weak nod of thanks. He didn't reply, just poured her a cup of warm tea. After breakfast, they helped wash the bowls without being asked. They wiped the floor with their sleeves, stacked wood by the stove, and swept the porch. Jack watched them, still silent. He could see they weren't just sitting around waiting for pity. They wanted to earn their place. Later, while his dog chased birds in the yard, one of the widows approached him alone. She was older, tall with dark red skin and sharp blue markings across her face. "My name is Meredith," she said carefully. Jack nodded. "I speak for the others," she continued. "We thank you for last night, but we don't ask to stay for free." He raised an eyebrow. Meredith looked him in the eyes and said, "We will work, cook, clean, fix your land, anything." Jack looked at the dry fields, the broken tractor, the falling fences. He hadn't fixed any of it in years because there was no reason. But now, maybe there was. "You can stay," Jack said slowly, "as long as you work honestly and you don't bring trouble here." Meredith's shoulders dropped slightly with relief. "You have our word," she said, and bowed her head with quiet dignity. That was the silent deal. No contracts, no money, just survival and trust. The kind of deal Jack remembered from old war camps, from broken men who had nothing but their word. That afternoon, the widows split into pairs and walked around the ranch looking at tools, fences, and animals. They asked small questions. "What's this used for? How do you turn this on? Can we move that box?" Jack answered without emotion. But something about their energy stirred old memories. The ranch hadn't seen this much movement in years. His dog barked happily, running between the women like they were family already. As the sun dropped behind the cliffs again, the ranch looked different. The porch was clean, the windows wiped, the barn swept, the water tank repaired with old parts. Jack stood silently at the edge of the field and watched them. They moved, like soldiers without weapons, calm and precise, but always watching the tree line. That night after dinner, he finally asked the question that sat heavy in his mind. "Why me?" Meredith, sitting by the fire, looked at the others before answering. "There's a story," she said. "It's told in quiet places where escaped slaves hide." She stared into the flame, her voice low. "A story about an old human soldier who once shared his rations with a dying enemy." Jack said nothing. "It was you," Meredith added. "They said you fed her, covered her, and then disappeared." Jack shrugged. "That was a long time ago, but not forgotten," Meredith replied. The room fell silent again, only the crackle of fire speaking. The youngest widow, Vela, looked up and whispered, "Can we stay truly, even if others come looking for us?" Jack didn't blink. "If someone comes looking," he said, "then I'll be standing between them and this door." Some of the women cried quietly, not loud sobs, just silent tears falling for the first time in months because someone had finally said, "You are safe here." Even if just for one night at a time. Later, Jack walked out to the porch and looked at the stars. They looked the same as always, but something had changed. He wasn't just surviving now. He was protecting something again. Maybe not a mission, maybe not a flag, but lives. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. Vela stepped beside him and said in a small voice, "We'll help fix your fields tomorrow." Jack nodded slowly. "We'll see if you can handle a shovel," he said. She smiled, and he didn't say it, but a small smile touched his lips too. Jack had lived through war, storms, and loneliness, but what truly surprised him was the sound of laughter on his land. The alien widows were working, talking, and yes, even laughing. They scrubbed floors, repaired pipes, and carried tools like they belonged here. It was strange, unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. One morning, while checking the barn, Jack paused at the door. He heard whispers, not of joy this time, but fear. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words made his back tighten. They will find us, Marith whispered to Vela. We've left signs, trails. They always find us. No, Vela said, her voice shaking. He won't let them take us. They don't care, Marith replied. Not about promises, not about humans, not even him. Jack stepped back quietly, pretending he hadn't heard. But his mind raced. Who were they? What danger had followed these women to his ranch? Later that day, Jack took his dog and walked the edge of the property. The fences were fine, but something felt off. Near the barn, he saw tracks, not human, not his dog's, not the widow's. They were deep and clawed, almost like boots, but wider. Fresh, too. Someone, or something, had been watching. That evening, he gathered the women inside the barn where it was warmer. He placed an old oil lamp on a crate, its flickering light casting shadows on the wooden walls. They all looked at him, quiet, respectful, but guarded. Jack spoke slowly. Someone's been near the ranch, he said. Fresh tracks. The room fell into cold silence. Then Marith stepped forward, her jaw clenched. They're bounty hunters, she said, private, cruel, paid by those who run the labor camps. They track escapees? Jack asked. Like dogs, Marith answered. They don't care if we live, only if we're returned. Jack took a deep breath. You weren't honest, he said, not angry, just tired. We didn't lie, Vela said quickly. We just didn't want to scare you, another widow added. You would have turned us away. Jack stared at the floor for a moment, then looked up. I fought worse than bounty hunters in my time, he said. If you're going to stay here, I need to know everything, so they told him one by one. The women shared their stories, of husbands lost in war, of being rounded up after peace treaties, of being labeled property on planets they once called home, of long marches, cold cells, and numbers burned into their wrists. They told him how they escaped, crawling through fences, hiding in empty cargo ships, how they shared water drop by drop, and how many of them didn't make it. 11 survived. Just 11. Jack sat down, his face hard but eyes full. He had seen brutality during the wars, but never this kind. This was quiet cruelty, the kind no one talked about on the news feeds. Slavery hidden under contracts and systems. Legal words used to cage the innocent. You can't go back, Jack said finally. The widows nodded slowly. Then we dig in, he added, standing up. His dog barked once, as if agreeing. We prepare. That night he opened a locked chest. In the storage shed, inside were old weapons, cleaned but never used in years. Pulse rifles, stun nets, even a few old smoke bombs from his soldier days. He laid them out on the workbench. The widows gathered around, eyes wide, some in awe, some in fear. You'll learn, Jack said. If they come, you fight. One by one, the women nodded. Some took the weapons with trembling hands, others with steady ones. Jack showed them how to load, aim, and hide. They weren't soldiers, but they were survivors, and survivors can learn fast. They practiced behind the barn, near the dried well. Jack corrected their stance, showed them how to crouch low, how to listen to wind. Always check your six, he said. Always watch your sister's back. By the end of the day, they weren't soldiers, but they weren't helpless anymore. Vela surprised him the most. Her shots were straight, her eyes focused. Jack gave her a silent nod of approval. She smiled back, proud for the first time. In years that night, while sharpening a blade near the fire, Marith sat beside Jack. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I didn't plan to, Jack answered. But I looked at you all, and I saw what the war did, what peace failed to fix. Marith looked at the sky, stars blinking in silence. "We don't need a hero," she whispered. "Just someone who doesn't turn his back." Jack didn't reply. But he knew something. Now he wasn't just offering shelter anymore. He was standing between life and death, and he would not step aside. The next morning, the sun rose over dry hills, painting the ranch in soft orange light. The air was still, almost calm, but something had changed. It wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was preparing for war. A quiet one, a hidden one, but war still. Jack stood by the barn, watching the widows stretch and warm their hands. They had tied their long robes up, rolled their sleeves, and tied back their hair or headscarves. Each of them carried something: a wooden stick, a wrench, an old blaster, or nothing at all. But in their eyes there was focus. "Today you don't clean," Jack said, voice firm. "Today you learn." He pointed to 3 areas. "The field," he said, "will be for movement, running, crawling, hiding. The barn," he added, "will be for defense, how to block, where to stand, where not to stand. And this side," he tapped the old workbench, "weapons." The widows didn't question. They moved into groups without speaking much, like they had already decided among themselves. Marith took the field group, Vela stayed at weapons, and 2 others led the barn defense. At first, it was messy. They stumbled, dropped tools, missed shots. One widow froze when the rifle clicked, her hands shaking too hard to reload, but Jack didn't yell. He walked over, gently placed her hands back on the weapon and said, "Breathe, aim, wait, don't panic." She tried again, and this time her shot hit the can. It fell, clanging, against the dirt, and a small smile spread across her face. "Good," Jack said, moving on. One by one, they improved. Behind the barn, Vela practiced reloading faster, her hands becoming quicker with each attempt. Jack noticed she never missed. Twice in a row. She learned fast, watched others closely, and helped those who were slower. She wasn't just smart. She was becoming a leader. In the field, Marith pushed the group harder than Jack expected. They crawled through dust, climbed fences, rolled under broken carts. "This is where you die," she said, pointing to the open path. "This is where you live," she added, pointing to the shadows. Jack nodded in approval. He didn't know her past, but it had clearly taught her how to survive. By noon, sweat covered their skin, dirt clung to their hands, but no one quit. They broke for a short meal, bread, dried fruit, and warm water, then returned without being told. Jack had seen soldiers with less heart. While checking the perimeter, Jack heard movement in the trees. He paused, rifle ready, but it was just a desert bird, flapping its wings and flying off. Still, it reminded him, eyes could be watching right now. He returned to the barn and reinforced the idea. "From now on," he said, "one of you watches the east ridge at all times." He handed Marith an old scope, scratched but still clear. "Signals?" Vela asked. Jack smiled slightly. "We'll use light. 1 flash means clear, 2 means movement, 3 means trouble." They practiced with mirrors and old glass scraps until they got it right. Even the younger widows took turns climbing the old windmill for a better view. That evening, Jack showed them the hidden trenches behind the hill. Long ago, he had dug them just in case, but never thought he'd use them again. Now they were lifelines. The sun was low again when Jack sat on the porch, tired but proud. He watched Vela kneel beside a younger widow who had twisted her ankle. She helped her bandage it, gave her water, and told her she did well. No one laughed or teased. They supported each other like sisters. Jack lit his pipe, something he rarely did now. The scent reminded him of old camps, old friends, old nights where survival depended on trust. He saw that same trust forming here, and it scared him a little, because it meant these women were no longer strangers, they were family. Later, Marith sat beside him, brushing dust from her sleeves. "We're not soldiers," she said, "but we'll fight if we have to." Jack nodded slowly. "That's the thing about fighters," he said. "You don't choose to be one. Life pushes you until you are, She didn't answer, but she smiled just a little. Jack noticed something else. Her eyes no longer looked hunted. They looked sharp, aware, ready. That meant something. That night they ate by firelight. The women took turns telling small stories, not of pain but of funny moments from their home planets. One talked about a pet that used to eat shoes. Another mimicked her husband's snore, making everyone laugh. Even Jack chuckled once. It was the first time in years. But when the fire burned low, silence came back. Jack looked at each face in the dim light and said, "If they come for you, they'll find me first." The women didn't cry, didn't speak, they just nodded, every single one, because they believed him. And he meant it. The ranch had become something different now. Not just a quiet place in the desert, but a home built on silence, strength, and second chances. Every widow had her task. Every corner had been touched by care. Even the dog, who once barked at shadows, now slept peacefully near the barn. But Jack felt it deep in his bones. The calm wouldn't last. 3 days passed, then came the sound, a low hum in the sky, like a broken horn carried by the wind. Jack was on the roof patching a solar tile when he froze. He turned his head slowly, eyes squinting at the sky. A dark speck grew larger as it approached. It wasn't a cargo ship, not a merchant or rescue vessel. Its wings were sharp, its engines quiet. A private enforcement ship, no doubt. He climbed down quickly, his knees stiff. "Get inside," he told the nearest widow. Marith grabbed the signal mirror and flashed twice to the ridge. Movement. The others dropped what they were doing and followed practice drills. One to the barn, one to the backfield, one up the tower. Bela stayed beside Jack, weapon slung across her shoulder, eyes steady. "You think it's them?" she asked. Jack nodded once. "I know it is." The ship hovered near the edge of the ranch before landing hard. Dust kicked up in thick clouds, choking the sky for a moment. Jack grabbed his old rifle, not to use, but to hold. Sometimes presence alone speaks louder than a bullet. The ramp lowered and 4 figures walked out. Humanoid, armored, casual but alert. Mercenaries. The lead one removed his helmet, revealing pale skin, cybernetic eyes, and a long scar across his jaw. He smiled like a man used to winning. "Afternoon, old-timer," he called out. "Heard you've got guests?" Jack didn't move. "They're working here," he said. "That's all you need to know." The mercenary chuckled. "Working, huh?" he echoed. "Funny thing, because we've got contracts that say otherwise." Marith stepped forward from the side of the house, hands raised. "They're lying," she said sharply. "Those contracts were made after our mates died. Signed. With blood or not at all." Another mercenary stepped up, scanning her with a glowing device. "This one matches our database," he said. "Confirmed escapee from Sector 19. Jack's jaw tightened. "Not on my land," he growled. The merc with the scar smirked. "This land belongs to the galaxy, old man," he said. "Not today," Jack replied calmly. Behind him, Vela had already taken up position on the porch roof. A red laser dot appeared briefly on the mercenary's chest, then blinked away. The lead merc noticed. He held up his hand to his men. "Easy," he said. "Let's not get dramatic." He turned to Jack. "You're a war vet, right? Saw you once in a report. Requar 9, Black Sand Ridge." Jack didn't answer. "Yeah." The merc continued. "I remember now. You were the one who held off a whole battalion with a shovel and a glare." He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thing is, that was a long time ago." Jack stepped closer, rifle in hand. "And yet I'm still standing," he said. The wind shifted. The ranch fell quiet again. Then the unexpected. The mercenary's smile dropped. He leaned forward, voice lower now. "Look, I don't care what they did or didn't sign, but I'm paid to bring them back. Dead or alive. Doesn't matter much to my boss." He tapped the side of his helmet. "But you're known, and that complicates things," Vela called out from above. "You try to take even one of us and we all fight." The other widows stepped from the shadows, weapons ready, not aimed, but visible. One held a rake, another a plasma. Cutter, another had nothing but a shovel, but their eyes were fire. The lead mercenary looked around and finally sighed. "All right," he muttered, "no shooting today." He turned back to Jack. "But this isn't over," he warned. "We'll be back, and next time we won't knock." Jack didn't move. "You knock again," he said coldly. "Or you won't leave next time." The mercs walked back to the ship without a word. The engines roared, then lifted them into the sky. Dust swirled as they vanished into the clouds. Jack stood in silence until they were gone. Only then did he exhale. Slowly the widows came out one by one, tension still in their shoulders. Vela came down from the roof and walked beside him. "Do you think they'll return soon?" she asked. Jack looked at the fading sky. "Yes," he replied, "but next time we'll be more than ready." He looked at the barn, the hill, the fences. They needed traps, cameras, stronger walls. They needed time, and he would give it to them whatever it cost. The warning had come and gone, but Jack knew mercenaries didn't bluff. If they said they'd be back, they would. Stronger, faster, and with fewer words next time. So the ranch became a war zone, not with bullets, but with sweat and silence. Every widow helped. They didn't complain, didn't ask for breaks. They were fighting for something more than freedom now. They were fighting for a home. Vela and Marith dug trenches near the water tanks. Others sharpened tools, wired scrap metal, and placed mirrors where sun could flash warnings. Jack taught them where to hide and where to run if it all fell apart. They memorized paths through the barn, the cellar, even the chicken coop. At night they didn't sleep much. They watched the stars, waiting for engines to hum again. Every dog bark made them freeze. Every gust of wind made hearts pound. Then came the night when the wind stopped. Too still. Too quiet. Jack was fixing a broken fuse by the barn door when he saw the flicker. Small, distant red, not from a fire, from an engine. Low to the ground, no sound, just movement. He moved fast, sent 3 flashes toward the ridge. Vela answered with 2, movement confirmed. Jack called out in a sharp whisper, "They're here." The widows moved like clockwork. Marith took position by the fuel drums. Vela climbed to the barn roof again, scope ready. Others hid behind the grain stacks, under hay carts, inside the storage shed. Jack crouched low, shotgun in one hand, old knife in the other. The ship didn't land this time. Instead, 4 smaller pods dropped silently near the east fence. No spotlights, no warnings. This was a strike, not a visit. Figures emerged, faces masked, weapons drawn. They moved like wolves, spreading out, toward the house, but Jack and the widows were ready. The first step into the barn triggered a tripwire. Boom. Dirt flew as a small charge exploded under the attacker's feet. He didn't die, but he screamed, loud enough to freeze the others. That was the signal. From the barn roof, Vela fired. 1 shot clean. A merc went down, no sound, just a thud in the dust. Marith kicked over the fuel drum, rolled it down toward the second pod, lit a match. Fire danced through the dry grass and roared to life, blocking the attacker's path. They fired back now, beams cutting through the night like blue snakes. Jack ducked, returned a blast, and dropped another merc by the water tank. One widow screamed as a beam grazed her arm, but she stayed hidden, didn't run. They had trained for this. The dog barked like mad, running toward the back fence. Jack turned and saw 2 mercs sneaking behind the silo. He grabbed the shovel beside him and moved fast. Not like an old man, but like a soldier reborn. The first merc didn't even react before Jack slammed the shovel into his ribs. The second raised his weapon. But a widow named Laurie tackled him from behind. She didn't have a gun, but she had rage, and rage fought harder than steel. Smoke filled the air. Fire cracked across the fields. The barn's back corner caught flame, but they couldn't stop now. Vela kept firing, her hands shaking but steady. 2 mercs turned and ran for their pods, but Jack shot one in the leg. The other escaped limping. Minutes passed like hours, then finally, silence. No more footsteps, no more shots, only the sound of fire crackling and hungry. The widows gathered slowly, checking each other. 2 had burns, 1 had a broken wrist, and 1 had passed out from fear. but all were alive. Jack stood, in the middle of the yard, covered in dirt and sweat. His dog limped to his side and sat loyal as ever. Vela walked down from the roof, her face blackened with smoke. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack looked at the burning field and shook his head. "No," he said, "but we won tonight." Marith helped put out the barn fire with buckets of water. Others wrapped wounds, tied cloth, hugged tightly without words. The stars above blinked like distant eyes, watching what no one else would see. Jack looked around at these women, these fighters, survivors, not trained soldiers, but they had stood their ground. This land, once empty and broken, was now marked by blood, fire, and courage. He walked to the old radio, turned the knob, and sent a signal on an old military channel, just 4 words: "Threat neutralized, need aid." Then he sat, finally, exhausted, but not defeated. Not tonight, because tonight they had proved something. They weren't just aliens, or widows, or runaways. They were defenders in this land. This ranch was theirs now, too. Smoke still clung to the land 2 days after the fight. The ground was black where the fire had burned, and the barn's back wall stood half-charred. But the widows were still alive, and Jack was still standing. They had survived the night of fire, not just with weapons, but with heart. Now the ranch felt different. It no longer felt like a place to hide. It felt like something real, something earned. It felt like home. Jack sat on his porch, arm in a sling, watching Vela teach one of the younger widows how to mend wire. Marith was speaking to 2 women near the water pump, her voice calmer now. The dog lay beside Jack, tail thumping slowly. For the first time in many years, the old man wasn't just watching time pass, he was part of it. Then came the sound of engines. Not hostile this time. The hum was steady, deep, almost musical. The women paused and looked. To the sky, Jack stood slowly, gripping his rifle just in case. A white ship landed near the field where crops once grew. Its paint was clean, with the blue symbol of the Neutral Aid Alliance, a peace organization. Not soldiers, not bounty hunters. Vela looked at Jack, her eyes asking the question silently. He gave a slow nod. "They're safe," he said. "I called them." 2 officers stepped out, 1 human, 1 insectoid alien, both unarmed. They carried medical kits and food crates. Their faces looked shocked as they stepped onto the blackened soil and saw what was left behind. But they didn't speak of war. They spoke of healing. "We received your signal," the insectoid said softly, its voice buzzing like wind through leaves. Jack nodded. "You'll find evidence, dead mercs, broken gear, heat signatures," he said. The human officer added, "We also got a ping from a mercenary escape pod, claiming his team was attacked without warning." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Did he mention the stolen widows they were hunting?" The officer's silence was the answer. Marith stepped forward slowly. "If you came to take us back, you'll have to burn this place again." The human shook his head quickly. No, she said. "We're here to offer aid, nothing more." He glanced at the others and added, "The galaxy is starting to notice what's really happening in those labor camps." The officers stayed for 3 days. They brought medicine, bandages, clean water filters, even tools. They interviewed each widow gently, asking what they had suffered. Some spoke, some couldn't. Not yet, but all were treated with respect. Jack watched closely, but for once he didn't need to step in. These visitors weren't enemies. Before leaving, the insectoid officer turned to Jack. "What you've done here, it will be remembered," she said. Jack just nodded. "Not for memory," he said. "Just wanted them to have a chance." After the ship left, a soft wind passed through the field, like the land itself had exhaled. The widows gathered in the barn, now cleaned again, patched up by their own hands. They had a simple meal, candles flickering around them. No more fear in their eyes, only peace. Later that night, Vela walked onto the porch, holding a folded blanket. She handed it to Jack, smiling. "You should sleep better now," she said. Jack looked at her, confused. "I sleep fine," he replied. She shook her head gently. Your old blanket is full of holes." He laughed, a deep, tired laugh that hadn't touched his voice in years. They sat quietly for a while, watching stars above. "You could leave now," Jack said. "With the camps being exposed, you could ask for new homes, better places." Vela looked out into the sky and shook her head. "We already found a home," she said. "This place, this land, these people, and you." Jack didn't reply, but his throat felt tight. He didn't say it, but he was glad they'd stay. Weeks passed, then months. The ranch changed again. Crops returned. A second barn was built. New animals arrived, and even a few orphan. Children from nearby towns came to live under the widow's care. People started calling the ranch Safe Hill. Some said it was a myth, a place where wounded hearts were healed by fire and kindness. Others came quietly, runaways, broken soldiers, lost travelers, hoping the story was true. And each time Jack would look them in the eye, and if they meant no harm, he opened the gate. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in red and gold again, Jack sat on his porch, older now, slower, but not alone. Beside him sat Vela, her hand resting lightly on his. Children played in the fields, laughter echoing across the hills. Marith taught carpentry near the fence, a hammer swinging with rhythm, and the stars above blinked slowly into view. Jack smiled, not because the past was gone, but because the future had arrived. Quietly, without force, born from pain, shaped by fire, and made real through hope.